Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Randall Stevens. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be taking a little deep dive into AVAIL's analytics platform. Been a lot of changes this year, and we're going to take some time and run through that with you. Again, my name's Randall Stevens, and I'm just making sure that we've got everything running. Todd, can you see and hear me?
I can see you, I can hear you, and I see your presentation.
Okay, great. All right, we're ready to roll then. Again, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to spend the better part of the hour running through analytics at several different levels. We should have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So as we're running through all of this, if something comes to mind, please make sure you chime in and let's try to get your questions answered. We're not going to go into all of the different software that was released recently, but we are going to focus on the analytics portion. I'm going to show you a little bit of the timeline history of how we kind of got here and show you where we are today with this, and then ultimately where we're going with this and what you can expect to see in the coming months. So thanks again for joining us. We had a major release cycle back in August. The analytics part of this cycle actually began releasing back in June and had an update in August as well. So the latest version of our analytics is what is called version 2.1. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it and are a customer, you should go take a look and get familiar with what's there. We think we've made a lot of improvements. We've got a lot of positive feedback from the improvements that have been made there. So as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the history of this is, why we built this product, this part of the product, and then ultimately I'm going to get out of these slides and I'm going to walk around the analytics and show you obviously what's there in the kind of out of the box dashboards that have been built for you, show you a few kind of tips and tricks if you're not familiar with using Power BI, how some of these reports work. Everything you're going to see today has been built on the reporting side using Microsoft Power BI platform. So that's our goal. If you're new to AVAIL and or a customer that hasn't been on any of these webinars in the last year, right? You hear us talking more and more about that our real goal is to connect people with information. The analytics is obviously a part of that. There's a lot of data and analytics that's being generated, which we feel believe that you as managers trying to manage what's going on inside your operation, that data can be a very important piece of actively managing what's going on and being able maybe for the first time see what people are looking for, searching for, and that kind of information. So the revamp of the analytics platform is just another step in that direction to help give you more information. So for those of you, you're only going to see, first of all, you're only going to see analytics if you're a customer and using AVAIL. So I'm going to assume that a lot of people have tuned in are customers. If you're not a customer, you're going to get a kind of just a peek of the kind of info and data that is being generated inside of our customers' operations and obviously how these reports can help you manage those types of things. The history, AVAIL was launched back in 2017. And for up until this year, all of the analytics reporting that was available for AVAIL was delivered through Google Analytics. So Google Analytics was the data repository. If you are a customer, been a customer, you knew why. We've explained why we made those decisions early on. It was largely so that you could have access to your own data and do things with it. But we were using Google Analytics as the data repository. And then we were using things like Google Data Studio for free reporting tools on the front end. And that served us, I'll claim, relatively well for the first, these first 6 years of the product being on the ground. What you're seeing now is that we began, if you look at these dates, we actually began migrating the data as far back as May of 2021. We began forking the data that was coming out of the software into both Google Analytics and began capturing an AVAIL database with that information. So we started working on and thinking about what the future of analytics was going to be back in 2021. That started with the release of AVAIL Desktop 4.1.3, when that data began coming directly into an AVAIL Analytics database as well. And then what happened was about a year ago, about this time a year ago, Google announced, kind of forced our hand on that they were going to be deprecating some of the things that we were relying on. And that was going to happen this past July. So we were on a kind of fast track to get that replaced and accelerate kind of our plans for that. So the first dashboards that replaced what we were doing with Google Analytics were made available to our customers in June. And that was the 2.0, AVAIL Analytics 2.0 dashboards. And then we had a quick update and a refresh of some of that within a couple of months. So in August, 2.1 became available. So you'll see us beginning to progress and take feedback. I'll show you, talk about how you all can give feedback on this, but it's an active part of the product and platform as we develop it. So as you see here, just a little bit of a glimpse. I'll show you some more roadmap slides, but we're in what we would call the first phase of this new initiative. And that was really to get these, what we would call standalone dashboards available so that our customers had access, kind of a parallel move to make sure that we replaced what you were relying on, delivered through the Google Analytics is now available through these new set of dashboards. That's been accomplished. But moving forward, this was also part of a move that we are working on actually integrating part of this analytics capabilities directly into the AVAIL desktop software. So I'll show you and kind of talk through what we mean by that. And then we're also beginning to provide direct access to the raw data through what are called Power BI data sets. So for enterprise customers who want to access those and build their own reports, we've begun that work too. So for us, a lot of this was us getting familiar and up to speed with what the Power BI platform looks like. We made that decision late last year to move in this direction, and there was a lot of work done the first part of this year and ongoing around the use of Power BI to deliver this information. So. All right. So as I said, the kind of terminology that we've been using is that these dashboards that I'm going to show you are what we would call global analytics. The first dashboards that were pushed back out in June, where the goal was to give you a very kind of global view of your operation and what's going on that there related to AVAIL and your content usage within the firm. But in August, we pushed out some new reports that start to get into more granular around things like harvest and some new project analytics that I'm going to show you today and kind of walk you through. What you're seeing on the right here is just a little snapshot or mock-up just to give you an idea of when we talk about this. But moving forward, part of what we're going to be doing is integrating these analytics directly into the AVAIL desktop application. One of the reasons we chose the Power BI platform is it's actually designed to let you build integrated analytics into things like what we're going to do here with AVAIL. And so the idea would be that on a per channel basis or different parts of the AVAIL interface, you can open up analytics and see information that's directly related to that channel or to the things that are going on inside of that channel. So, and then the other piece of this is today, most all of the information that you're going to see is still what we would refer to as transaction data. So these are actions that people are doing, performing a search, dragging and dropping and opening a piece of content. These are all actions that are happening, and that's all in the data and analytics flow. What we refer to as state data is, what analytics today won't tell you is how many pieces of content are in one of my channels. So that's what we would refer to as state. That information lives elsewhere and is not in the normal analytics transaction flow. But what we're going to be starting to do is to merge those two things together. So we'll get state information mixed in with these transaction information moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit about that as I show you these reports. So that's all, positive things we think for continuing to deliver better and better information on this front. All right. So as I said, the current version of our analytics is 2.1. There's a bunch of reports, and I'm going to jump right out of this and start showing you what these reports look like and how you can access those. The search, user, application usage, these were all reports that we initially pushed out and made available in June when we first launched this. And then in August, we came back, and those reports that you see there in the teal and green, teal or blue kind of color content channel, we had some specific feedback asking for some better channel information. There's some new project level information, which I'm going to run you through, and there's some new reports on if you're using our harvest tool. All right, so let me switch over now, and I'm going to go, as I run through these, I'll pop up the AVAIL desktop and or Revit to give you some context about when you're seeing these reports, what you're seeing. So let me get back over here. All right. So I am now in a web browser, and I'm just going to refresh this. If you go to analytics.getavail.com, I'm going to refresh it. One of the things you'll find is that we are authenticating you as a user. Obviously, it's your information. There's an authentication process to log in, see that. So when you go to analytics.getavail.com, you'll be asked to log in, and you have to be, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to be an admin to the system in order to have privileges, or is that where that
is correct? Yep, you do have to be a user admin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right now there's a you have to be a user admin in order to have access to the analytics. Ultimately, as we progress with this, that could change. That we could begin, especially as part of as we begin to integrate this into the application itself. That's going to open up that people that are publishers or have editing privileges on channels will be able to see specific information related to the channels that they've been given access to. So you can imagine that kind of permission handling at that level versus these global analytics may be treated differently, and different customers want different people to have access to this information. So this first phase is you have to be an admin on your account in order to get access to this and see it. Just real quick, when you do land here, it'll land on a home screen. Just a few little basic instructions and some terminology and things. If you're not used to using Power BI and some of these reports, things like understanding that you can control click to do multi-select. I'll show you that as we're running through these reports, what we mean by that. But there's just some things. Take a read through there if you're not familiar with it. And then also importantly, down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a give us feedback. Feel free if there's things that you're not seeing or don't understand, or reports that you wish information that you could see, go fill out that form. We use that. That's actually what drove the 2.1. There was several early customers who gave us quick feedback on these things, and we came back very quickly within the first couple of months and put out a new set of dashboards and fine-tuned some things for you. So keep giving us feedback as you run through these things. So all right, so there's over on the left, you'll see it says AVAIL Analytics. If you click on that, what you're going to see then is a initial dashboard. down across the bottom, you'll see that these are tabbed. So you'll land by default on this overview dashboard. So it is, as the name implies, meant to give you a general overview, quick snapshot of how many users. First of all, let me explain. I'm logged into our demo account. We have this is our 3rd generation demo account, so it's our what we call our demo 3 account. And so you're going to see a bunch of us in here. That's this sample data that you're going to see, but this is actively our demo account that we use as we're giving demos and talking. A lot of me and a lot of Todd in here. I'll show you how you can kind of filter this stuff out. But obviously, when you log in, you'll see your own data. A couple of things about just how we tried to go about laying out these initial dashboards. One of the big improvements and features I know that everybody wanted to see, and that was direct access through these reports to who the users were. I won't dwell on it, but when we were using Google Analytics as the data repository, it was against their terms of service to store any personally identifiable data, like an email address. So we were restricted to using some, ID numbers, and then translation of that had to happen. So it was just more difficult for people to be able to see that. Now that that's in our hands, we've got complete control of that. You'll see that all of your users are readily available to see in these reports. What you'll notice across all of these reports, just from a high level design, we tried to keep all of the user information and channel information over here on the left, tried to keep that in one place so that when you go to each report, you're used to seeing it in the same place. And by the same token, up in the top right is your ability to set what date range that you want to see this data over. I don't know, some of you all I'm sure there's probably some people on here that are Power BI gurus, but some of at least out of the box kind of capabilities that come with designing these, they are limited to the kinds of things you can do. So without writing a bunch of custom code, it's difficult to say, show me, everything that was, last month. When you see this, you're actually looking back 12 months from today. So it just so happens that we're on the 2nd. So it's kind of close to being a full month, but and you can change this and view it by days, weeks, months, however you want on that front. Also, the other thing you'll notice is I'll do this as I run through these reports, but if you make a change here, that's going to carry through all of your reports. So if you've decided that you just want to look at the last 3 months and then you're clicking these tabs, that'll hold across those reports until you change it. So that is carried through across those reports. And then just one last thing to note, we show you on several of these reports what channel that the information that was being accessed came out of. When it comes to things like searches, though, there is the ability in AVAIL Desktop. Let me just pop AVAIL Desktop up and show you. This is my AVAIL Desktop software, and these are the channels. So if I'm inside of a channel and performed a search, then that search is going to be recorded that it happened in this channel. But if I'm back out on this kind of home screen and I search, this is, would search across all the channels, then obviously we can't give attribution to the search to a specific channel. So that's what we call a global search. And if I pop now back, what you'll see is over in your channel, there's a little asterisk global search. That means that that when searches were performed back out front, right, in that home screen, that's how they're going to be recorded. And that's the way they'll show up as a channel or where that search originated. The other thing I'll note that you can note before moving forward is on this overview screen down in the bottom right, we will tell you which version of the analytics reports that you're seeing. So if you ever do snapshots or something, you'll be able to know if you're looking at which level of reports that these were. And it helps us when we're doing when Todd and the customer success team is dealing with anything, which version that people are talking about. So The other nice thing about us being on this Power BI platform is as we do make updates to these reports, we will push those and you will automatically inherit those updates as soon as we do that. So that's another benefit. One last thing before I start diving through these individual reports, you'll notice that there's little information, little I for information mouse overs, which we try to incorporate a few things to tell you what you were seeing. There's the note about the global search. One on this first screen that's especially helpful under this content actions. If you click on that, that's actually going to open up a Google Doc, a Google Sheet. And for those of you that have been using analytics, you've probably seen this, but these are all the individual transactions that are being recorded out of AVAIL. So the way that these transactions events happen, these are called events. There's a category, an action, a label, and a value for that. So for instance, I can be, and you'll notice there's also tabs because we got lots of different plugins and software, each recording different kinds of things. But the AVAIL is the AVAIL desktop, primary kind of source of information. So for instance, if I was doing a search, there would be a search category. We delineate between if you're doing a text-based search or clicking on a tag to perform a search. So search category, text search is the action. What you typed in and what the search would be the label, recorded as the label. And the value in this case is how many search results came back with that search. So that's the basics of that. And then if you look over to the right, there's a lot of other metadata that can tag along with that. So for instance, who the user ID, what account that was, which piece of software, what was the source that you were originating this out of? Were you in a channel? Which channel name was it? What was the channel ID? Was there a file name? There's a lot of information. And if you look over to the right, when you get into things like Revit, I'll switch tabs. Here's information that's being generated when you're working out of Revit. And over on the far right, you'll see that we're actually picking up. This is where that project information gets tied back. So this spreadsheet should be a good resource, especially if you begin wanting to build your own reports and looking at the data sets. This is your truth for what is coming into your analytics stream. And it should be pretty self-evident about what most of this stuff means. If there's something that's confusing to you, you can reach out to Todd and the success team, and they'll try to help you navigate through that. But that's a great resource for you to be able to pay attention to. And I'm going to show you, it does get a little complicated because there are a lot of different things that are being tracked, and to be able to parse through that, understand what you're looking at when you're looking at this data. All right. Any questions so far, Todd, before I move on?
Just one was clarifying, was there a timeline for potentially, providing analytic access to, say, like a non-admin, or is that still to be determined?
TBD, I think. Yeah. I mean, I'll talk after I run through these reports. I'll talk about the schedule for the integrated, contextual analytics inside the AVAIL desktop, which will give, non-admins access, but we can also, we'll have to talk about what that means to give others access to that.
Yeah, that's all for now.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to click over, kind of run through these. The search is as it sounds. This is a report that's meant to give you some insights into what people are searching for. Up at the top, you'll notice that you can look at the number of searches that were performed in any given period of time. Part of this is we want you to be able to just land on these reports and kind of see high-level activity that's going on inside of your firm. We also give you some metrics if that's growing or declining over that particular period of time. And then so most importantly, right, you've got your users and the channels over on the left. In the middle, you've got a graph that's showing you that activity. And over on the right, we can actually see the search terms. And down below the search terms, you can actually filter this by whether you're just interested in seeing tag-based searches or text-based searches. By default, you're seeing both. And you can also filter, one of the popular things to use this for is to see what searches were performed that return 0 results. That's a really great piece of information because you can begin to go look and see what people were looking for that return 0 results. And that, should give you an action plan for either educating people about where the information is and which channels to go search in, or gives you some insights that maybe you've never had about what people are looking for, and or the way that they're talking, by what they type in is tells you that they may be using language that you would normally use in the way your information is organized. So that's all useful. On the left, just high level, if I click on my own name here, right, I am now filtering by just information that's related to me. Todd, that's on the call here with me, if I click on his name, I'm now just looking at information that's related to Todd. And, it's a little bit kind of tough to see in this interface about what's selected or not. But if I click on that again, it releases it. So you'll just have to get used to this interface. You're either clicking to select and clicking again to unselect. The other thing that you can do, though, is if I click on my own name, I can multi-select by holding the control key down. So now if I said, okay, here's myself, and I'm looking at these search terms, and I want to know where that I searched for the word textures. So now by multi-selecting over on the left, I can see which channel I was actually doing that search in. And my guess is that was probably a tag-based search that I was probably clicking on for that. There you can see probably wasn't a text-based. There was 0 text-based searches. So I was clicking on a tag called textures that just happens to be in that channel. Just remember, just a little side note, if you're using key cards and have begun using key cards, those are actually tags. Those are just a visual representation of tags. So when people are clicking on those, that's executing a search as part of drilling through those tags. So again, just a real trick is if you have done a multi-select and are drilling down several levels, I just always kind of go back over to say my name and select it, which is an unselect, basically release all. But there you can see that information. If I want to see our demo account, sometimes gets a little bit polluted because we end up doing a bunch of testing in this account too. So sometimes we get bad data flowing through here. But basically, if I click on this filter by 0 results, I can now see, even down by person. So if I'll pick on Adriana, here's, you can see a lot of times misspellings. The other thing though that you may find is that you may see searches like casework, and if I click on that, it's like, well, why would that have not returned anything? Well, it could have been either, in our case, maybe it was just a problem with the software that we were testing, but you can drill down to which channel that was happening in. A lot of times what I've seen, people experience is somebody will be in a channel and perform a search and they think that they're in a different channel. So you may get 0 results, when you're in a channel instead of being back out front and searching across everything. So just be aware that that's a possibility that you can see in the data. But you should get some great insights. If I just want to see what text searches people were typing in, we like to use the word door when we're doing demos and searching across things, but you can drill down and see where people where that activity is going on and which channels people are in and performing those searches. So that's the search tab. If I march over to the users tab, this one will just give you kind of high level about how many users are in the system. What I'll say, there's actually, if you go out to our blog, I wrote a blog post recently that talked about some anomalies that if you've been a long-time customer, you can go read that blog post. But if you're looking at your own data and you're seeing some things drop, especially around searches and some of those things, there was some I'll just call false positive data that was showing up in analytics. That all got cleared up starting with our 5.0 Revit release. And what you should start seeing in this, we're not putting what we call the AMU, your active monthly users, which is your official count of what you're basically what you're billed for, what you're paying for with AVAIL. But this is really, really close. We'll begin putting that state data into these reports. But if you're on the 5.0 platform, your AMU, this little average number line, should be dead on when you're looking across 12 months of what your active monthly users are across that time period. And again, you can see, if you just want to see which months a user, was active in, you can do that. If you want to go to a specific channel and see, there's probably channels that Todd or I have created as we're demoing things. But if I go to one of my, let's go down here to one of these Revit channels, which usually gets a lot of activity, right? You can see which months and how many users were active in a channel. So this can be useful for that as well. If I march over to the content tab, this gives you a little more deeper information about specific content that's being used. So you can now see, again, by user. Over on the right, if you are using a host and cloud channel and that content is being downloaded, this report will show you who's downloading content. We have some customers that just use host and cloud channels. Some use a mix, some use none at all. All that content's on-prem, or hosted on-prem instead of in a cloud-hosted channel. Your most used content is going to tell you which content is being used, whether that was on-prem or coming from a host and cloud channel. Also, your downloads would happen if you're using marketplace channels like ArcVision channels and those types of things, and pulling content down. That would also show up in your downloads. And then in this middle section, you'll actually see the file names of what are being used, and you'll see what date that content was being used. And here's where you'll see the action, which then goes back to, hey, what were the actions that were happening? So specifically, there are actions when you're in a channel and you double click, there's a download action. There's when you double click on something, you're opening that content. You do a drag action when you're dragging it over into an application. So these are all the kind of action types that you'll start to see on your content that shows up here. So if I went to, let's just go, I'll go click on my own name to filter this out. So here I can see by the date, right? Here's yesterday. I didn't say this. This data and analytics is not in real time. It's being collected in real time, but these reports and the database for allowing these reports to run basically updates every night at, after midnight for the day before. So I'm looking at today data that's only good through midnight last night. So you can't look at this stuff in real time. Be very cumbersome. I won't say that we won't ever get there, but it's more complicated to have that data streaming in real time. But I can, if I go over to one of my channels that I may have been working out of, say one of these Revit harvest channels, I'm using the control key down to select that. I can see, specifically what files were being used, the content files. There are, lots of drafting views and things that we demo with primarily out of that account. And then here you can see, I won't get into too much detail, but a place action happens inside of Revit. That's one of these. If I go over to my Revit tab, there's actually a place, which means you not only loaded it into the project, but you actually placed it in the model, right, into your active project model. So you'll get those kinds of actions showing up here, dragging. If somebody's doing maintenance and deleting content, you'll see all that showing up. So you can drill down right into your content and begin to see that. If I pop over to the channel activity, this was one that was a request from some customers. Can we see a better view of what's happening inside of these at a channel level? So what you're seeing here is, again, users, how many actions per user. So you can see I'm a very active user. Myself and Todd win that here in our demo account. But you can also see which channels are most active. So you can see the actions that are happening across that time period, and then also how many users were in that channel in that period. So that can be helpful for you all just as you get your info broken out into channels, wanting to kind of understand the general use and where people are spending their time, which content is popular and in use. So if I click on one of those, that Revit library, now what the graph's going to show you is the activity by month in that channel. There were 9 users. And if you mouse over a bunch of these, you'll also see things like we'll tell you what those actual actions were. Delete content, how many times was there a tag search, views, dragging content out of that channel. So that can all be also very helpful. Here's that harvest channel, was busy back in May. Usually if you see activity in our demo accounts, it's because we were probably doing product releases and doing lots of testing and that across using this software. So hopefully you'll find that useful. We don't, this kind of shows you just again a really high level what they're broken up into color by channel. So if you have you can also click on this right here. So that's a channel, that's a specific channel that was being heavily used. So vice versa, there's a marketing channel that was heavily being used, and then you can see who was using it and who was in there doing what. So just another way to slice that info and data. All right, so I'm going to move over to projects really quickly. You'll see 2 project tabs. I'm going to spend most of the time on this. I'm just going to demo, show you out of this project's beta. What's going on is historically, the only way we had to know what the project was to actually pull the project name and project number that the Revit project was reporting back. And as I probably don't have to tell everybody on this call, that can be very noisy. One, a lot of times that just says, it may say test, or, it'll just say project name and project number because it hadn't been filled out, or so it'll look like something like that. Or as the project changes over time, that info changes over time, which means the data associated with that project file is the analytics data is being tied back to different information. So it was hard up till now for us to tie that to a specific Revit project. If you go over to this beta tab, what we began doing with this latest release, the AVAIL 5.1 Revit plugin, was we began using what's called extensible storage to write a tracking ID, what we call document ID, back into that project. So one of the things that you should do as you begin using this latest version of the AVAIL software is to make sure that your process is that somebody with that software installed opens that project up. Depends on how you'll start your projects, but open it up, let us write that ID back in, which we do automatically, and then save that back. And then the next person that checks out or opens that file, we see that tracking ID is there, and all of this data and analytics is now going to be tied to that specific RVT project file or family file. We actually write that into each of these documents. So you're going to see a little bit of anomaly here because if I clamp this down to 2 months, by the time we finally got this out, you won't see this problem. But if I say click on my own name and look at, we demo a lot out of this Snowden Towers project, you'll see that there's a single document ID that's being used now to track that information around that project. And the other things that you'll see then is not only, the ability to see this by project, but over on the right, you get, and this can be fairly dense, and there may be some better reports if you give us feedback that can help you. But this basically lets you start to understand everything that's going on around that project that AVAIL is touching or has the ability to touch. The first thing is, if you haven't started using the latest release, we have a brand new feature inside of Revit called the Project Navigator. So I'm just going to pop over to Revit real quick and show you. So here's the Revit project browser, but we have a new AVAIL interface called Project Navigator. This is actually letting you search inside the project. So this isn't searching AVAIL. This is actually helping you navigate inside the project itself. So here are doors. A new feature of this that everybody really enjoys is this new instance navigator. I can actually see how many instances of that type are placed, where they're placed, which level they're on. I can sort and group and view these in different ways. And then if I want to actually get to that door, I can actually just click on this and we will search across that Revit project and go open a view and take you right to that instance inside the project. So there's that door that I went to. So that's for another webinar. If you haven't seen that, you should go get that installed, go watch some of the webinars that we've done specifically on that feature. But this is what we call the project navigator. So now when you go back and look at your analytics, there are kind of two ways to think about what's happening inside your Revit projects. There's data coming in traditionally from AVAIL in your library. That's what we call content mode. So data coming from outside from your library into your project, that happens through content mode. And then when you're inside the project now and inside Project Navigator, you're now looking at the data and searching and navigating in what we call navigation mode. So you can filter by that. So I can say, show me navigation mode inside that project, and you can double click to open things. So if I filter that down, I can see on that project which elements that I was searching and navigating to. And if I come out of navigation mode into content mode and click that, I can see what data was being loaded into the project. So load, there's a difference. There's a drag action. Once something's drug over and it lands in Revit, we actually load that into the project and record that. And then ultimately, we a lot of times are kicking you into placement mode so you can actually place that item in the project. So that's yet again a place activity that would happen. So you'll probably hopefully understand that data can be loaded into the project and not being used. So that's the difference between load and place. And then if that's requiring an upgrade, you can actually see what content was coming in. There were older versions of Revit and were requiring an upgrade as it came into the project. You can filter this down if you want to just see what drafting views were being brought in, and I want to see what drafting views were being placed. So here I can see, we try to show you if we have access to what file that was actually coming out of. There is a Revit element name, which element that was. Sometimes it's coming out of an RVT and the element name is different because it's not the source. This happens to be harvested content, so they are the same. And then ultimately, if I were to look at something like a family, let's filter down by families, I can see a family. And so if I go to like this dining table, this gets all the way down to which type was loaded. So if I go find maybe this door, so I can see exactly which type, if an individual type was loaded or placed. So quite a bit of information that you can drill down and kind of see. Ultimately, this is also telling you who. So if I wanted to see, hey, who brought in this banquet table into that project, I can look over here now and see, one or more users that brought that into that project, that data into that project. The other thing that you'll see up here is that we will show you the earliest date that we saw that project in action. So you can see historically, right, which projects are new, or what are the latest ones that have been opened up and are beginning to be used. So yeah, quite a bit of data there that you can dig into. Last couple, and then we'll get this opened up for questions. There's an application usage. If you're managing your software installs, this one can be very useful. We'll actually tell you which application, which version of the application, and the last time we saw that in use. So if you're trying to track down who's got the old software that may be causing some problems, let me take this back to 12 months, then this can be very useful information. So I can say, hey, Todd and I, again, touch a lot of different versions of our software, but you can go back and see, the last time Todd touched that version of the AVAIL for Revit was on 3/15 that we saw data, saw that in use. So it's very helpful for helping you understand if everybody's up to the latest versions of the software. And anyway, that gives you some insights into tracking that down. This Harvest tab, if you are using Harvest, if you're not using Harvest, we would claim that you should be. Go take a look. It's very powerful for helping you manage, I'll say, everything that's not a family inside of Revit. So all the different types of content. This report is actually for those that are harvesting and managing. This will show you when things were harvested, where they were being harvested to, whether it was a version create of that item or an update to that item that was happening, which version of harvest you were using, what date that harvest happened on, which source file that came out of, which channel you were harvesting data into. So lots of just really good management info here for starting to understand, what's going on. And, harvest is usually managed by a handful of people inside of our customers' firms. So this will let you kind of understand who you're managing when your BIM managers and your team that's responsible for updating gives you some insights into what's going on there and when things are updated. Last but not least, this last tab is giving you guys a sneak peek. If you think about a dividing line right over here, imagine that everything over the right is where I've now got pick a channel. So what we're working on is we're going to be integrating everything you see to the left will ultimately begin to show up inside of the AVAIL desktop. So if I was in a channel, so let me just go to like my precedent library channel, then when you would open up analytics in context in that channel, one of your admin, editors or publisher to that channel that would have access to the analytics data, they'll be able to just open up a report that's telling them specifically things that are going on inside that channel. So this is all part of us trying to, contextually get you the information you need. You don't have to go dig around a bunch of reports. You'll be able to just go to that channel. We're bringing that right to you inside of the app. So everything we're doing is trying to pull information closer to you contextually with better insights. So this is coming. We wrote a little note down here to explain it, but this will get updated a lot about what data, but this is your all's opportunity to say, hey, we want to hear from you all. What do you want to see or what would be helpful at a glance inside of those channels? You always have access to go dig deep through these other reports into things, but what do you want to see at a glance? What would be useful to help you manage this stuff on a channel by channel basis? We'll try to build some good tools that will be contextually available then inside each channel. So that's that. Let me jump back to my slides, be thinking about your questions here, and I'll kind of show you real quickly what's coming. So we've already delivered what we call these global dashboards. Those are available to you now. If you're a customer, you can log in to your analytics.getavail.com. And if you're an admin, you'll be able to see those reports. We are working on, we can now begin to give our enterprise customers direct access to the data sets if you want to build your own custom reports. So we've already started doing that with a handful of customers. We needed to get our arms around it just to understand the load. But if you do want access and are used to doing this kind of work, reach out to Todd through the customer success team, or support@getavail.com, and Todd will work with you to get you direct access to that. And then, as I said, we're working on this integrated contextual analytics. This will ultimately be part of AVAIL 5.0, which we're actively working on. And you may see that before we get to 5.0. Along those lines, we have been delivering. We delivered this Project Navigator. We delivered the first phase of analytics. We are working, for those of you that are going to be at AU in 2 weeks, we're going to be giving you guys a sneak peek preview of this new related content feature, which will become the basis for the AVAIL 5.0 release. And the integrated analytics will also be a part of that as we make that upgrade and work in that direction. So that related content is pretty sexy. If you're not going to be at AU, we're teeing up another webinar on November 30th. We'll be giving a webinar on giving you a sneak peek of that. So you can go to getavail.com, and if you go to getavail.com and click on webinars, you come to this page and you can already sign up for that webinar on the 30th. Exciting stuff. I would encourage you to go to do that. We've been moving hard and fast, and that's going to be our primary feature that's going to anchor a 5.0 release. All right. So we got 10 minutes left. Todd, any questions coming through?
Yeah, I got a couple for you. One was about if it's possible to track, when content was first indexed or harvested, which you did show the harvested tab where it's showing that, or when it was last indexed. Yeah.
Not currently. That will hopefully be information that we will begin. That'll be part not of these transaction data, but the state data. Understanding, we do have dates, in the behind the scenes of when things came into the system. That's not part of the analytics transactions that are currently being reported through these analytics, but that will be available in the state data. So as we begin to merge that, the other thing just to think about, it's difficult on the transaction side. So for instance, you'll see some stream analytics if you're using AVAIL Stream, but that's a very chatty, noisy system. There's lots of info and data that's flowing there. So the stream analytics is just giving you kind of when rules were changed and when primary indexes, not every individual transaction that's happening is not being recorded in the analytics flow for that. And same if you're manually indexing. If you drug over, 3,000 pieces of content and a bunch of folders to index into a channel, we're not writing out each individual 3,000 pieces information, which would be required to report through this. So you should see that. That was long-winded to say, as we begin to integrate the state data, we should be able to start to make that available to you.
And we had a couple questions around, I think, the application usage tab got people's wheels turning on what other applications you can help report on, such as like the actual Revit version that users may be leveraging as well. Is there any potential or possibility for that?
That is entirely possible, right? And what would happen is we would use our Avail for Revit add-in that's being installed, which is required to use the Revit. But we would, if that's the kinds of things, in fact, you're going to see us as we move into the project deeper. There is a lot of information that we can begin because we're now kind of in a position touching all that project data and Revit itself that we could begin also reporting back in the stream. So what I'd encourage you to do down in that bottom right hand in your analytics, go fill out that form and give us some explicit, like, here's what would be very helpful. So we can, sometimes, we don't, I'll just say that's not always top of our mind to do because we know there's so many other ways that people are getting this information inside the firm. But if it's relatively easy for us to do, we can add that and we start seeing customers asking for it. We can go begin to report some of that kind of stuff back through as well.
Yeah, submission for desktop connector was also added in there as well. That's the current questions we have right now. I answered a couple other side ones directly in the chat. So if you've got the question, please drop it in.
Yep, I'll wait a couple of seconds before we wrap this up. I'll just say thanks to everybody for joining. Again, if you're going to be out at AU, our team's going to be out there. We got a booth on the floor, booth 780, I think is our booth number. We always hold a party on Tuesday night. So hopefully you got it. If you're a customer, you got an invite to that and you need to register and sign up for that. We're partnering with our good friends at Ignite and ArcVision on that on Tuesday evening. And then we're also having a lunch and learn session that's happening on Monday. Unfortunately, it's sold out. It's booked. I think we got 170 people in that session. And that's why we're, if you're going to be there and didn't get signed up for that, there's also a long waiting list. So that's why we're going to do the webinar on the 30th. But that'll be your first sneak peek and it's exciting stuff. So I encourage you all, if you're not going to be at AU and get to see it, tune in on the 30th and we'll give you a sneak peek of some of this next gen stuff that we're working on. I think a lot of exciting possibilities there. But we need your all's feedback. So, all right. Anything else, Todd?
That's all for now.
Thank you, Todd. One
came in just now. Yeah, so I'm just reading it live. So, any collaboration with Guardian for analytics?
That's up to Guardian. I'll leave it at that. We'd love to collaborate with them. I mean, I think they're capturing a lot of info on the Guardian side. I think they've got their own analytics data. Todd, we were talking about that
Yeah.
the other day. So, one possibility is that if you get direct access to your Avail data set, you could begin building your own reports, and you're a Guardian user, you could begin combining that information. So if it's things like file names and things like that, you could begin actually tying information together. So that's kind of up to, their data set, access to it. I'm not sure if they give you direct access to those data sets as well. That might be something you want to go talk to them about, or, a lot of
Yeah.
times, we got a lot of common customers. So if a customer brings us both together and says, we need you all to do this, right? Collaborate and make this happen. And I'll just say, developing software in this industry for 30 years, very rarely, and I'm a big collaborator. I'm always out trying to get other software companies to want to do things together. It rarely happens. It only happens if customers come and tell us respectively that we need you all to do this. Then that's the best action that gets the most attention. So if there's something that you would want to see, and you're using both those products or any other product that's out there, and would want to see these things working closely together, it really takes your all's pressure on those. We're always wide open ears. We're building AVAIL to be a collaborative platform. It's a platform that we're going to be tying hopefully lots of stuff into, and we want lots of third party other software vendors to leverage what we're doing and take advantage of it too. But it really takes our customers forcing those issues most of the time to get attention.
Yep. And what I've seen from Guardian Analytics is they're providing access to that data set too. So yeah, it definitely seems like there's the potential for being able to bring the two together. So
yep.
That looks like it's all for now.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. That we timed that about right. Took the better part of that hour. If there's any other things that come up, especially after you dig into those, just reach out to Todd's team through the customer success channels, and we'll try to get you taken care of. Thanks for tuning in.